Chapter 2. Fires were being reported in the lower levels of the building, specifically 17, 18, and 19. John Morrison had felt the rumble in his building. The soldiers on the lower levels had described it as an explosion. He silently cursed Jack Newsom and the old man's lies. Even Beruger had tried to influence him to leave more of his guard in the tower. Instead, they were all trapped below, fighting fires. Dallas, Vedra, Eldrick, secure the villa. Nothing and no one can get through to my office. They acknowledged his orders but did not respond. Morrison found their cold demeanors to be frightening when they were in his presence. Morrison saw that two more of the Crusaders had killed each other in a scuffle. One he recognized as the bounty hunter he had hired a month ago. Why did he not kill that man when he had the chance? Fool. Morrison watched the last four move to the elevators. A team of 11 reduced in such a short amount of time made him feel confident that Beruger's squad would finish them off. "Chopper, are you fueled to go?" Morrison said into his comm. "Yes, sir. Ready and prepared for the flight to Berlin." John Morrison hesitated at the thought of abandoning his city. Months ago, this was the most secure place in the world. Now his forces were falling apart, and the city was being destroyed by rioters in the streets. Leaving would be the final admittance that he had lost control. "Stand by," Morrison said. "Understood, sir." Morrison tapped his fingers on his desk. He was growing anxious. It would be safest to leave now should the rebel group make it. Then his thoughts jumped to what Beruger would say. The man might protect him for a time, but without New Purgatory, John knew his power would be significantly reduced, and he did not wish to be a pawn for another man. He let out a long sigh. He knew he could take those who remained if he needed to. It was he, after all, who had originally started training his private army. His shooting was still excellent, though he hadn't performed out in the field in some time. That was if they could pass the augmented. They had been stopped once before, and they would be stopped again with nowhere to run. Yes, the more John Morrison thought about it, the more comfortable he was with remaining right in his chair, his pistol loaded in front of him. "Where's Dylan and Ezra?" Janet asked as Alex sprinted towards them. Alex shook his head. "Fuck," Janet said under her breath. "The elevator?" Alex pressed. Janet looked up at him. His tone made him sound uncaring, but when she looked at his eyes, she could see that they had been welled up. Layla moved over to him, but he held a hand up. Janet gave him a nod, feeling tears she was trying to fight rise behind her eyes. No, not yet. It must be jammed," Janet answered. The meter above gave a ringing sound and showed the elevator beginning to lower from the penthouse floor to their location. Janet cocked her head to the side. "I didn't do that," she said. "Let's fall back. You have any stickers left?" Alex asked. "Tyler had them all." Alex winced for a moment as he thought about his friend. "What about stingers?" "Just one," Janet replied. Alex motioned them all down the hallway and waited at the end in cover. The door opened, and 3 soldiers slowly moved out and down the hall. Alex extended a hand, counting down from 3. When he made a fist, Janet tossed her last stinger. The soldiers were already firing, forcing her to duck. The soldiers continued to fire, but there was a moment where they slowed. "You said they focus on only one target at a time?" Alex asked Janet. She nodded and then turned to Layla. "Think you can outrun them?" he asked. Layla didn't hesitate. "Oh, damn well no, I can." Layla sprinted out from the hall and straight for the fountain. Bullets chased her down, but they were inaccurate at distance. "Talia, cut around the rear. They might like bullets and shrapnel, but I don't know anyone who can survive a blade in the spinal cord." Janet and Alex moved back to the shops, dodging bullets as the 3 Marines shifted their shots. Layla fired off a few more rounds to draw them back. They were strong and smart, attacking in unison, but something was lacking in attention span. Alex, Janet, and Talia stayed ducked behind their shops as the Marines passed them by. Their armor was ripped, and blood oozed from the stinger shrapnel. Talia eased up to the window sill and jumped over it. She extended her sword, rushed the rear guard, and thrust her blade into his neck. Alex had been right. The soldier dropped immediately. Talia sprang back towards the window with bullets flying after her. Alex and Janet flanked the other 2, aiming for the head. The soldiers tried to turn, but were catching bullets from Layla as well. Both fell without firing another shot. Alex came over to the windowsill and checked the bodies. They were covered in various wounds and had scars in the parts that hadn't been shot. Alex went to put 2 more bullets in each of them when his rifle clicked empty. He kneeled beside the fallen soldiers, resting on the butt of his rifle. He felt weariness in his body and in his mind. He felt like how these soldiers looked. You're lucky to be alive. Not everyone else is. You need to finish this. For them. For everyone left. He forced himself back up and glanced to his team. You all right? He asked Layla. Yeah, she said, tossing him a rifle clip. You? Alex shook his head. I'll make it. Where's Talia? Janet asked, reloading her rifle. Almost on cue, Talia came through the shop doors, nearly doubled over. Fuck, Alex said, rushing over to help lift her. I am fine, she replied, motioning towards her back. I do not believe they went through. Alex could see 3 bullets that had cracked her armor at the lower back. One of them was leaking blood. Yeah, they're dug in pretty good. Let's get your armor off, he replied as he moved behind her. No, Talia said, standing up straight and holding her arm out. It is all that is keeping me upright. She's right, Alex, Janet said, propping her up under one of her arms. She won't last long in a fight. Then we need to get her out of here, Alex replied. There's no backtracking now, Layla stated. No, but I'll bet that bastard has a hell chopper fueled and ready to go. You find it, Janet. Layla and I'll go finish Morrison. If there is one, how long should we wait? Janet asked. Don't wait. 10 minutes, then get out. Understand? Alex said. Janet glared at him. She knew it wasn't so much a question, but an order. Talia let out another groan. No one else, Alex said as he stared at Janet and shook his head. Not one more. Not because of me. Janet took a deep breath. She never took her glare off Alex, but gave him a single nod. Fine. I'll see you on the roof. Alex and Layla waited by the entrance to the elevator as Janet and Talia went up first to the helipad. He was staring down at his hands, looking at the blood that drenched on his fingerless gloves. Alex? Layla said. He replied, looking up from his palms. They're all gone, aren't they? Brandon, Tommy, Dylan. Yeah, Layla, they are. Think they'll make it out? Layla pressed. Alex didn't reply. He tilted his head towards one of the windows and looked out at the city. Smoke was rising from everywhere, even right in front of the tower. He was fighting the dread that resided in his chest. Only now that they had been stopped did he realize there was no turning back. He looked back over at Layla. They will. Nothing will ever stop Janet, he answered. Layla gave him a sad smile. I never thought we'd actually make it this far, Layla said, looking up at the monitor that showed the elevator lowering back down to their position. But here we are, on top of the world, in the richest man's tower. A long shot from ambushing patrols and living on scraps. Not how I imagined us getting here. I thought we'd all be here, and we'd all make it out. It cost us too much. It might cost us still. Then we'll share a shattered glass grave with that son of a bitch, Layla said, extending an arm towards him as the elevator reached their floor. Alex took it, grasping her hand tightly as the two entered. All right, he said. I'll be glad to leave this place. Janet continued to hold up Talia on her shoulder and gave the woman her sidearm to use. They'd run into little resistance on the top floors. She wondered if the man was arrogant enough to believe they'd never make it past the front doors, let alone the diamond quarter. Bad mistake. They dragged on to the helipad. Alex had been right. There was a hell chopper waiting, ramp opened. It was almost certainly for John Morrison's escape. Janet pulled Talia up the ramp and laid her in the main hold. She was breathing like normal now, but Janet knew her back could have been shattered by the force of the round slamming into her plated armor. Her legs had been dragging for the last few minutes. Talia, are you still with me? She asked. Talia gave her a nod. It hurts. I've never been in such pain before. Can you still move your legs? Yes, it just hurts. I need a few moments, Talia answered. Janet rested a hand on her shoulder. I'll be right back. She moved carefully towards the cockpit, ensuring that her footsteps didn't clank on the metal floors. She unslung her rifle. Janet aimed at the back of the pilot's head and called out to him. Try anything and I'll spray you all over the glass. The pilot didn't respond except to raise his hands in the air. Start the pre-flight checks. In 10 minutes you'll move this damn thing where I say. Understand? Yes, the pilot responded. John Morrison could no longer watch the camera feed, though he could hear the rumble of the elevator behind him. Either his soldiers had been successful, or they were dead. For the first time in many years, he decided to leave the situation to chance. Rain was pouring harder now, blinding his view of the city, obscured by water sliding over the glass. Tightly in his grip was his 9mm pistol. This war had started with his decisions, with his plans to rebuild New Purgatory into something greater. It had required him to make decisions some found inhumane. Decisions he did not always agree with needed to be made. The way his father passed secured what the future needed to look like. Morrison was never blind to the fact that he had likely ended many fathers, mothers, sons, or daughters. But if he had learned anything from the day his own father died, it was that progress comes at a cost. Progress you expect and do not. The man found it fitting that this would end with him in the fashion it had started. The question in his mind was who had sharpened who, himself or the Crusaders. The doors to the elevator opened, and he saw two bodies in the reflection of his mirror. I'm not often impressed by those who do not work for me, John Morrison began. Even with Captain Newsom's treachery, you still managed a feat that none have ever attempted. Far more than any simple street gang, despite your origins. Though with the methods you employed, I am hardly surprised. I am nothing like you, Alex replied, keeping his trigger finger steady. Morrison turned and walked towards his desk, leaning down on it with his arms flat. Oh no, Alexander Velasco. We're nothing alike at all. No, I was referring to your fallen mentor. After all you gathered, the trust of all those women and men, even the ones who tried to kill me before, only to throw them all away into the fire. The only difference is that you're standing here. That's where the similarities end. You've taken it a step further. I'm not here to talk about my sins with the man that gave me no other choice. Blood Boil, Yankee Stadium, those are your atrocities. My people gave their lives to stop you from doing it again. Alex spat. Everything I've done was to keep my city safe from street trash like you, Morrison yelled. I gave you an option. I gave everyone an opportunity for a better life, but instead you spurned it. You attacked my soldiers and killed my people. You're no better than the people that murdered my father after he gave them the greatest gift mankind has ever seen. We could rebuild this city, the world, into a place of order and discipline. Instead, I'm stifled by those who want to live in the past, who want the world to go back to the way it was, the same way that led to it being how it is now. Spoiled. You and everyone who had the privilege of being born or raised within this city's borders, never having to see the ravages of outside. You walked London, Alexander Velasco. You were born there, Layla Lansfield. Tell me, was life there preferable to what you could have lived under here? My people have nothing at all, Layla replied. So you came here and chose to emulate that when you could have had more, could have done more. But instead you point the finger at me because I have tried to keep us from returning to that state, Morrison shot back. I don't deny anything I've done. Those that decided to stand apart, to stand against me, became my enemy. That's what it takes to rebuild. That's what it takes to guarantee a tomorrow. you both would challenge that." "You never gave people a chance," Alex replied. "They lost it when they murdered my father, and when they tried to kill me next," Morrison shot back. "And you did exactly what they thought you would," Layla said. The three stared across at each other for a time. Morrison's words sank in. In a strange way, Alex felt like he understood. He didn't agree with the man's methods, but he could tell the man genuinely believed every word he said. Morrison raised his arms to his side. All this, I earned it. I've fought off invaders, raiders, and gangs before. If my soldiers can't do it, then I'll do it myself and get back to making this place a city again." Alex had heard enough. He pulled up his rifle and fired. Morrison rolled hard to his left side and behind his desk, coming back up and firing a single round that caught Alex in the chest. Alex fell to the ground, while Layla began spraying fire in Morrison's direction. New Purgatory's leader ducked behind his desk, pinned down. "There's no winning here. Not in my tower," Morrison yelled. "Even if you bring me down, what I've built will live on. My influence goes beyond New Purgatory. You cannot stop progress." Layla made a quick lunge towards Alex and was caught by Morrison as he took advantage of the lull in firing. His round missed her upper body, but slammed into her calf. She screamed out, falling next to Alex. "Alex!" cried, looking at the piercing on his chest. Her lover was smiling. With one hand, he lifted his journal, Morrison's small caliber round in its dead center. "How my soldiers, some of the best forces left in the world, couldn't take 11 of you down, I'll never understand," Morrison started, moving towards their bodies, hidden behind his secretary's old desk. Alex could hear the slow footsteps, then something louder just beyond them. The sound grew. Morrison stopped and looked back towards his windows. A hell chopper hovered just outside, rain bouncing off it as it stared New Purgatory's leader in the face. The bright lights made Morrison cover his face with an arm. "What in the hell?" The hell chopper opened fire, smashing the glass, cutting through Morrison's office and hitting the man himself. Morrison fell to the ground more out of reaction than because of the wound. The bird continued to fire, smashing into the walls behind all of them and wrecking everything in its path. When the gunfire stopped, Alex peeked over the desk and watched the chopper fly off into the distance. Rainwater began to blow inside the office that felt refreshing on his face. And John Morrison lay in a pool of blood. The hell chopper had caught him in the legs. Layla forced herself up and onto the secretary's desk as Alex moved towards Morrison's body. The crumpled CEO looked up at Alex as he gasped for breath. "No, I killed you," the man spewed, with words that splattered blood on his lips. Alex lifted his journal just in front of him, showing Morrison where the bullet had lodged itself. "No, just the first half of my life." He reached into his jacket and pulled out Eli's pistol. He put in the clip Janet had given him. Alex raised the pistol and fired a round into Morrison's gut. The man cried out, screaming in pain, but between breaths found enough strength to taunt Alex one final time. "I enjoyed ending threats as they came up, Alexander. But I knew one day they would end. Yet here you are, torturing a man you've already beaten. You want to rebuild the world, but you're the product of Jack Newsom. How can a crusader rebuild the world when all he sees is the next crusade?" Alex leaned down and put the gun to Morrison's forehead. "The Crusaders only existed for one crusade. One you and I have both reached the end of." Alex squeezed the trigger, and blood sprayed over Eli's gun and his face. He stood back up and took a deep breath, wiping his arm over his face, and let out a long sigh before moving back over to Layla. "We did it, Alex. We actually did it," she said, trying to ignore the pain in her calf. Alex nodded to her, and he was glad that Janet and Talia hadn't waited and got free. Someone had to survive, to lead New Purgatory and tell them what happened here. He felt like he could finally breathe. Alex clasped his arms around Layla and held her tight. "It's finally over," she cried. "Yes, it is," Alex said as he kissed her, and then reached for the detonator in his jacket pocket. He held it outward for them both to see. "I must have thought we were already dead," Layla said as she watched the rain fall from the sky. "Yeah." Alex was still processing the last few minutes, staring out at the weather he had loved, with the woman he loved in his arms. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Not yet," she said, pulling his wrist down by his side. "Let's just watch the rain, for a little longer at least." Alex smiled and kissed her on the forehead. The two held each other tight in the chilly air, ready to embrace the end together. A moment later, the door to Morrison's office was kicked in. Alex turned with his pistol, but was surprised to see Janet standing at the door. "But the chopper!" "No time," Janet said, taking a glance at Morrison's body before helping Alex lift Layla. The trio made way for the elevator. "Why did you come back?" Layla asked as the elevator pushed up to the helipad. "We never left," Janet replied. "Pilot got cute, and I've got no idea how to fly the fucking thing." The dumbfounded look on Alex's face stayed with him until Layla was strapped into the pilot's seat. She had learned to fly during their journey. The takeoff was a little bumpy, but they were in the air, gliding by the tower. Then he realized the detonator was still in his hand. As the Hell chopper took off, he pressed it down hard. Layla did a flyby on the tower and watched as the garage level imploded on itself, sending the rest of the tower falling to ground zero. Morrison's soldiers scattered in their vehicles and on foot at the site of the destruction. Each pane of glass exploded in rows, and floor by floor collapsed, until finally there was nothing more than fires, smoke, and dust. He looked in the hold and saw Talia resting on the floor. She gave him a smile before wincing in pain. He wanted to smile. His goal was finally achieved. That was until he thought of all it took to get here. His friends, the closest thing he had to a family. They were still in that tower, even if they were already gone. "Brandon, come in," he said into his comm. But there was no response. "Mikhail?" He tried again. There was nothing. They were the only four to survive the suicide mission. Alex brought a hand to his temples and fought his eyes shut, fighting back the tears that were welling up. Janet opened the door from the cockpit and saw Alex standing in the hold, a nearly broken down man with more wounds than he could show on his battered gear and scarred arms. "Get us back to Alonso's, Layla," she said. "Follow the bright lights." "The other chopper is gone," Layla said as she began landing the Hell chopper. Once they were on the ground, Alex, Layla, and Janet helped Talia back down to their rooms. Layla called Alonso on the intercom to get the local doctor. The map of New Purgatory caught Alex's eye first. In the dead center, where Morrison's tower had once been, was a long, bloody survival knife stabbed down into the table. "Mikhail, he made it." Alex's eyes didn't move from the blade. "I will find you, Shadow." News spread quickly of Morrison's defeat, and his soldiers were in full retreat to their last bastion in Queens. The riots in the streets changed from destruction to celebration of their newfound freedom. Even Alonso's was packed with fresh faces of people who had come from the other side of the city, unafraid of patrols or crackdowns from the Marine forces. Janet waited until Alonso's dock had cleared Talia of any structural damage before she went down to join with the merrymakers. She didn't even stop to clean the blood and dust off her body. Instead, she helped Talia down with her. The four survivors found themselves in the same booth Jack Newsom had introduced himself in. They ordered drinks, shared smiles, but for a time sat quietly, thinking about the events of the last several hours. The high of winning had put them on a soar. but the same realization Alex had as the tower crumbled began to hit them all. Eventually, they returned to their rooms and gathered at the meeting table for a light meal. Now that my service is complete, I must return home, Talia said, breaking the silence at the table. My war is not over until my people are free. Enjoy the rest of the night, Layla replied. We can fly you home in a few days. Alex and I might leave the city for a while. Let things calm down before we can come back. And rest a while. You're welcome to stay with my people. We will need more for our fight, Talia offered. That's a debt we will repay, but we need some time. When your people are at the precipice, we'd be happy to join your crusade, Layla replied. I am happy to hear that, Talia said, smiling back. I'm going to rest my bruises. I'm heading back for the bar. I think I'd rather forget about the better part of today, Janet said. Besides, I think we all owe our friends a couple more drinks. Layla gave Talia and Janet a nod and went over to Alex, whose wounded journal was splayed out next to the blade. So he did get out, she said, wrapping her arms around Alex's neck. The hell chopper. That was him. He probably saved our lives, he replied, reaching up and massaging her arms. Would you like to dance tonight? She asked. Alex smiled. He was so tired, but he was never too tired for her. Tonight was the night to celebrate despite the loss. Otherwise, it was all for nothing. Sure, just let me finish this page. Layla moved to sit on the arm of his chair, holding him close as he wrote. Last entry. After too many years of watching my friends and innocents die, New Purgatory, New York City, can finally feel relieved. John Morrison is dead, lying in the grave of his 100-story monument to horror. The city's paid a terrible price to see him removed, but to have left him alive would have cost even more. The names he purged from the world is too long to ever list on any memorial, but I will remember those who fought to honor their memory, to see him dead, to set our city free. Elias Lanner, Jack Newsom, Van and Tyler McGrath, Remy Dominguez, Otto, Nayala Hargraven, Brandon Dwegu, Dellen Johnston. May they rest in peace. Alex closed the journal and tossed it beside Mikhail's blade. All right, beautiful. Let's go. As he led her down the stairs, the writing of his passage stayed with him. Their city was free, and with that freedom, the Crusaders were at an end. The remnants from 10 years ago could rest easy, knowing their mission had finally been completed. The city could finally rebuild the right way.